Well, I didn't know that one of the most accomplished entertainers, dancers, boxers, flutists in the world was going to come on before me. Why the hell did you bring that flute, Michael? Because I don't know how to dance. I have no clue how to dance. That's a tough act to follow. Consul General, Ambassador. Actually, I have the head of human resources here for Moet Hennessy, Mr. Frederick Chardot. We need a new ambassador for Hennessy, don't we? That was the best advertisement we've had in a long time, Ambassador. Thank you very much. Thank you. This could be very good for my career, by the way, Frederick, because she also knows my boss extremely well, Mr. Christophe Navarre. So put a good word in. It's coming to the end of the year. I need to say congratulations to Patricia and to Neil. You've heard it all before from Michael and everybody else. 30 years in this industry that you are in is challenging without the advent of the internet and all of the social medias. But my goodness, not only have you survived, but flourished, and you've been true to your roots the whole way. And I'm just proud to know you both. And consequently, that makes it a great honor for me to be here and to be given the opportunity to say a few words. I have no speech, which my colleagues from Moet Hennessy will not believe, but I have a story. I'm going to tell a little story. But Patricia, Neil, thank you so much. All of your records are well known. But if you don't mind, I just want to call out Neil one more time, because I know what he did when nobody else wanted to do it, when it was against all of popular thinking in 1994, when he lobbied to give the head of Sinn Féin a visa to come and visit Bill Clinton. And while you celebrate 20 years of the Good Friday Peace Agreement today, it would not have happened had he not got that visa. Neil, congratulations to you. And sometimes you hear stories that are slightly exaggerated. That's the real deal. And by the way, lots more behind all of that he did. So Jen came up here and stole the show for Guinness, and all my Moet Hennessy friends are going to say, how did that happen? So, because we do 14,000 events a year, 7,000 of them Ambassador on Hennessy. We really do, 14,000 events. You thought you were busy, Michael? I only go to the nice ones. But it did remind me about the day, Jen, that all the presidents of all the big beer companies in the world had got together for a convention. It doesn't happen too often, but they're all there. And the president, all the presidents went to the bar afterwards, as you would. And the president, Mr. Bush, from what was then the Budweiser, he says, I'll have a Bud Light. And he got a Bud Light, and the president was there, of course, from Miller, and he said, I'll have a Miller, please. And Adolf Kurz says, I'll have a Kurz. So the bartender was looking at this man, and he says, Mr. Guinness, would you like a beer? He says, no, I'll have a cup of tea, please. And all the other presidents turned and looked at Arthur Guinness and said, with suspicion, because I thought something was up and he was hiding something, why are you not, there must be something going on here. Why are you not having a beer? And he says, no, guys, if you guys aren't going to drink beer, then neither am I. Jen, you should use that one. Right? You've heard it all before, I'm sure. There's always, I could spend 2 hours here telling old jokes, Ray, about Guinness, couldn't I? 18 great years. I'll touch on that, actually, because what I want to do, if it's okay with you, is just tell you a little bit about my past first. I think it's interesting. Yes, I did grow up in Rostrevor. No one's ever heard of it. Now, I want to tell you something very important about Rostrevor. I left there 40 years ago, and it was a very tiny village, 1,200 people. Now, you know the way the world grows. It's now become, everybody has extensions, and the world's growing fast. Well, I went back there 2 weeks ago to visit my daughter, and guess what? The whole thing's expanded. There's now 1,257 people in Rostrevor. But one of the most famous people ever to come out of Rostrevor was Colonel Ross, And for all our American friends, and that includes me because I became a citizen of America 10 years ago, and I'm very privileged to be given that honor, thank you, was a guy called Colonel Ross. Do you all know who he was? Colonel Ross owned, literally, Ross Driver. And Colonel Ross was sent for by the king. He says, look, things are not going too good over here in the War of 1812. You better go over and do something there. And by the way, teach them a lesson when you're at it. And make sure that when you do win your battles, as you duly will, wipe everything out. And he did. He razed everything that he saw to the ground. He killed everybody that he met. And he got to the White House and he burned it down. The original White House was burned down. I shouldn't be telling you this here, should I? Donald, why am I telling that story? It's a true story, and he got killed shortly afterwards. But I thought what I would like to do is tell you about, humble beginnings. It's true, grew up in a very small farm. And I guess we were as poor as we can be, but we never knew it because we had food all the time and we had abundance of incredible love with me being the oldest of 9 children. And it was a big surprise to me because my father had dreamt that I would come back and turn the farm into a business. Farming is a tough gig. It's 365 days, the animals want some food every day, so he wanted me to turn it into more of a business. But one day I was working in a bar, my uncle's bar, and a couple of guys came in from Guinness, including the man who I'm proud to call my mentor, a guy called John Lavery, and I give off stink about their service. It's much better now, of course, and it was pretty bad then. And I joined Guinness for a 1-year executive development program and stayed 18 years and got on the board, as you said, Neil, which was great. And I thought I ruled the world at one time because I was 36 years old on the board of Guinness and everything was great. But I want to mention one more time, John is no longer here. And today I want to talk a little bit to you about 2 things that are so important to me. Maybe the only 2 things. Brands and people. Or people and brands. It doesn't much matter which way you put it. So just for a moment, I want to think of John, because without John, I would not have been here. So that's for John Lavery. 18 great years with John and Guinness, and then I got a call. I went to Dublin, joined a little company. Ray, you remember this, Gilbey's of Ireland. You probably met the man who I took over from, David Dand, who created Bailey's Irish Cream. Fabulous time in Dublin. Became the chairman of the Wine and Spirit Institute of Ireland, having a super time bossing around all my competitors, and thought, this is it. I've made it, just built a new cottage, and everything was going smoothly, I thought. Got a call from my boss in London, and he said, listen, you're doing great. And I thought, whoa, here we go again, another promotion. And I said, well, what do you want me to do now, Jack? He says, well, I want you to leave and move to California. 1999, end of 1999. And I said, well, maybe I don't want to go there. He said, you're not listening, kid. We're not asking you to go. We're telling you you're going. So off we went, Jenny and my youngest son, Luke, to San Francisco, where we had a fantastic time there. I lived in a little town called Tiburon in Marin County. Just had a super time and probably would have stayed there forever if I hadn't got a call from a guy I knew for many years. And you'll start to notice as I go through this story of my past that people that I've met keep coming into my life. There's one here, Donald Gaynor, he and I worked together in Beam Global. But the people that I've met along the way and those connections are incredibly important. So I got this call from Philip Bowman, and he said, we'd like you to run a company called Allied Domecq. You won't know who that is, I'm sure. It was a British conglomerate, but they had brands like Maker's Mark, Canadian Club, and so forth. And the opportunity to be responsible for those brands in Canada and Mexico and the United States was too good to refuse, so we packed up the bags again and we moved to Westport, Connecticut, where the headquarters was. Super time there. I don't think I ever would have left there until I was driving into work one morning and the news came across to say that a company from France called Pernod Ricard had just bought us. And so that was interesting. They had bought us with 14 billion pounds sterling, with 5 billion borrowed from Jim Beam, because that was a big deal. And I liked the culture at Beam, so I went to run the new Beam Corporation, for Canada, Mexico, and the US. And that was amazing for me because here I'd come from one of the most iconic beer brands on earth, from Ireland, which was a great thrill, to one of the greatest cream liqueurs on earth, Bailey's Irish Cream, to perhaps the most iconic bourbon on the planet. And I thought, whoa, that's quite something. And then I got another call from a man I met 16 years earlier. My current boss, Christophe Navarre, called me and he said, look, we'd like you to come to New York. We'd like to give you a demotion. True, I was the CEO. He said, I'll make you a COO. And I said, I don't want to be a COO. And he said, well, you have to be a COO for a while. And I said, well, why would I want to do that? And he said, because you're going to work for Dom Perignon, Clerkin, Ruinart, Hennessy. I said, okay, I'll take it. And I took the job. And thank goodness, since June of 2008, that hasn't gone too badly. So what I want to tell you about brands and people. Well, first of all, I think it's so important to recognize that people like myself can't succeed unless you have a brand that you understand, appreciate, know what the DNA is, know what the perception of that brand is, and then you get the right people in the right jobs. And certainly my father gave me a little bit of advice just before I went into Guinness. He said, listen, son, you're a good kid, there's no doubt about it, you work hard, but you're not that good. You really are not that good. You're going to need a lot of help. So make sure you surround yourself with the best people you can find, and make sure you put them in the right job. And I will tell you, I've been to many companies. Most of the companies that I've had the great fortune of working with don't have bad people. Think about it. They're all good people. But very often, they win the wrong job. And Frederick and my team now, with all my executive team, we spend enormous amounts of time interviewing. Indeed, we've been accused of being very slow in our interviewing process, but we want to make sure, we know all the people coming in are good. We want to make sure we get the right job for them so they can grow, and that's what we want to do. So let me give you a couple of examples, what we try to do. We've had a very successful run, you could say, in the business for the last 4 or 5 years. I don't think I'm boasting when I tell you that today with the revenue, I know my chief financial officer here will be very upset with me giving out a number, but who cares? So we have nice revenues of $1.4 billion, so we're a reasonably sized company. Thank you. But what's important about that is we're the fastest growing large company in America. Now, when I say large, there are some private companies, which is very interesting. Some small private companies are actually growing faster. But we're probably growing at 2.5 times faster than any of our large competitors. And that's to do with getting the right people with the right brands, because in 2008, the brands weren't growing. They were in decline. There's only one brand growing, as most of my colleagues know. So I think what's very important there is to set out a vision, and my team helped me build a vision, which is to be the undisputed leader and most respected luxury wine and spirit company in the United States. Now, some people say, come on, you're already there, but we don't think so, because we want to be seen to be the most respected in the eyes of our competitors, our wholesalers, our retailers, and most importantly, our own employees. And that's the dream, that's the vision. If you look at our mission and vision, there are no numbers, 0 numbers. Because we know if we get the right people in the right jobs and we become the most respected, the money's going to flow in if we can drive these great brands to better things than what they've done before. So what do you do about that? Well, we had all these very good regional meetings. My team and I said, let's have as one example, let's have an all-company, 330 employee sales conference here in New York with all the expense that incurs, you can imagine. It's quite expensive. But we wanted to make sure we had everybody working together, all these people with all these wonderful brands. And the first thing we did, after we give a few examples of the performance, not much, we spent a couple of hours, And then we get into talking to our people about them. And before they all came to the conference, they had to complete some information about themselves to find out, as best we could, their strengths and perhaps some of those weaknesses. And we all have weaknesses. And the whole idea was to get these people sharing this so that we as a 330-person team can use our strengths to support the weaknesses, but more importantly, by understanding the weaknesses, which person can support with their strengths to bolster that up. We put big photographs, beautiful videos. We do 14,000 events, so we know how to put on an event, from the Golden Globes to the Clico Polo events that we do. So we had all our staff, employees who had long service memberships. We recognized them. Because I can tell you, and you're going to hear me say it a couple more times before I sit down, people really make great brands greater. There's no doubt about it. So, connections in people, I'm going to touch on for a moment. I think one of the most important elements is when you make those connections, and I've just alluded to a couple. If you notice how my career has gone, I have never sent out a resume in my life. I don't have a resume. What has happened is someone says, I know Jim, Jim knows him. What do you think of that guy? And that's the way it works if you really get to know the people in the business. And so it's not a surprise to me, but it's a great honor that two of my most important wholesalers in America are sitting at this table. And it's not a surprise to me, but it's a great honor that one of them is Ray Herman, who is now, I would say today, one of my mentors, if not my best mentor. And I meet Ray every couple of months, and he will say with this sensational, laid-back accent that he has, well, Jimmy, how's it going? And then, of course, I ramble on for 30, 40 minutes before I take a breath. Okay, here's what I would do about that. And, you know, you've been an amazing man. I met you in 2000 in Greenwich, Connecticut, with your long-lost partner. And you're one of the reasons that I decided to talk about people today, because you're one of the greatest. Ray, thank you. Give him a round of applause. One of his competitors is sitting right beside him. Richard Leventhal had his business completely wiped out, and I mean wiped out. All the cases that we sold him 2 or 3 days earlier were floating down the river in Hurricane Sandy, and all his people and all the friends and his competitors got together to help him. I called him up, and he paid me a very nice compliment. I called him up in the kitchen when he was thinking. He told me that he thought this might never happen. I may never be able to put it together again. When I tell you it was a big loss, I hope you don't mind me saying it was hundreds of millions of dollars of losses, gone. And I said, you know, Richard, whatever you need, we're here to help you. And ever since that, I've got this deep friendship with Richard, which will last forever. Thank you, Richard. And Kevin O'Neill is there as well. He's now part of the Charma Sunbelt Group. Great friend from the old days of Diageo. And this is what I think really matters so much in an industry where people mean so much and give back so much. It probably is no surprise to you then, therefore, that two of the biggest supporters in America of Cooperation Ireland, the work that I do to try and promote a sustained peace, which I think we have, but more importantly, a very tough reconciliation of those two men. So started off with a meeting, goes through business, they end up in two of my biggest supporters for Cooperation Ireland. And that, I think, tells you something about people, doesn't it? I'd like to touch, Neil, if I could, just a moment on Cooperation Ireland, because that's where the rubber hits the road when it comes to people. Because we have a wonderful province, young people, one of the best educational systems in the world, but they've had a traumatic 30, 40 years helped by your Good Friday Peace Agreement. And some people, including Richard Pino, who's on my board of Corporation Ireland, as indeed Donard is. Donard and I worked together at Beam Global and emptied many minibars, many late nights, as we talked about the troubles of the world. And my ambition is to shut down Corporation Ireland. But before I do that, and I'll explain to you why I want to do that, I need to recognize Kieran McLaughlin from the American Ireland Fund, and I need to recognize Loretta Brennan-Glucksman, who started talking to me 10 years ago about how the American Ireland Fund could help Corporation Ireland with some programs. And it was an amazing honor of mine 1 year ago in Belfast at the Titanic Centre, where Kieran announced on the stage that the Corporation Ireland Fund was going to receive $1 million from your American Ireland Fund. And that's what People's all about. Thank you. I think one of the ways that we can promote a sustained peace with reconciliation, particularly in Northern Ireland, while the Republic of Ireland has gone through this very buoyant stage, is jobs. And jobs are so important to young people, gets them off the street, gets them occupied, gets them to understand and appreciate each other's differences. And in Northern Ireland, differences have been a bad thing. And I'm trying to promote the notion that being different is actually a great thing, because you can start enjoying all those differences. So one of the things I try to do is bring jobs to Ireland, but I have a particular focus on Northern Ireland, which I'm sure you can appreciate, because if you think about it, if we bring a good job into Northern Ireland, it materially helps the economy, stating the obvious, north and south. There is a new road system now in Ireland that links Dublin to Belfast. You can go that 100 miles now at 60 miles an hour. You can figure it out in an hour and a half, which is amazing. It'll support, the jobs will all support highly educated young people who really want to work hard. It's been a tough time for young people growing up in the north, but they really want to get out and work hard. We take in an intern every year from either Queen's University Belfast or my son's university, University of Ulster. And they come into Moet Hennessy, and you can see what happens, Frederick. They're so embarrassed, they're nervous, they're shy, they don't know what to do. And 1 year later, when we export them back to Ireland, you have got first-class, world-class, wonderful young people who are afraid of nothing and can take on the world. So we need to get them good jobs, well-paid jobs. And of course, if you do all that, guess what happens? You get a reconciliation, which is just organic. So here is a little bit of an appeal. Neil, I know you love politics, but I hope you don't mind me taking the stage to announce my appeal on behalf of the Northern Ireland diaspora. Because I'm impressed, greatly impressed, Ambassador, by what your government has done. Minister Jimmy Dinahan is your Minister of the Diaspora, super work. Our Consul General's home is open all the time to the Irish diaspora, including the Northern Irish diaspora. But I think the Assembly that's now working finally in Northern Ireland, it took a long time, we need someone in that Assembly to take up the notion that the Northern Irish diaspora deserve a figurehead. Now, I'm saying the Assembly may not be the biggest in the world, so maybe we can't have a unique minister, but why not add to the portfolio that they currently have a responsibility for the diaspora? So people like me, who are going to do it anyway, I'm going to do it no matter what, but all the people who are on the fringe, all the young people who need a rallying cry, a calling cry, give us a Northern Irish minister responsible for the Northern Irish diaspora, and you will be surprised what will happen. So Neil, write about that, please. So I'm going to finish up by just taking another moment to rekindle my thoughts, as indeed John Potter will here. By the way, should you guys not be working? There's something going on here, taking a half day, but it reminds me of a time that when I was with Guinness, I was in a pub in Dublin, and this rash-brash Texan walked in, and he put $1,000 on the table and said, "Listen, I've heard all the drinking stories, but there's $1,000 here for any man or woman that can drink 10 pints of Guinness one after the other." course, there was a bit of a deathly silence. One guy actually got up and walked out. But he came back 5 minutes later, and he says, okay, I'll have a go at that one. So the bartender puts up the 10 pints of Guinness. This young man starts putting them down. He puts the last one down. He picks up the $1,000 and heads for the door. And the rich taxi says, hold on a second, hold on a second. Where did you go there? I says, I nipped out to the pub next door to see if I could do it. So I guess the moral of the story is never stop, never settle. I couldn't be more honored. I want to thank you again, Patricia, Neil. I want to thank all my staff, my executive team for supporting me. I desperately need to thank the 320 people who work with me and who are not here, but who do the work when I'm not in the office. And it would be scandalous if I didn't thank all my brothers, 7 of them, my only sister Rose, and my extended family who keep me in check in every way. And last but not least, as Michael did, I had the most wonderful upbringing in Rostrevor with a very big family, with the best parents in the world. I just wish they were here. Thank you.